The cheers and laughter of our wedding guests filled the air, but as I stood there, holding Sarah's hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. My eyes scanned the crowd, and that's when I saw her, Emily, my best friend, raising her glass for the maid of honor toast. Our eyes met, and for a split second, time seemed to stop. A flicker of unease passed through me, like a shadow crossing my heart. I pushed it down, forcing a smile as Sarah squeezed my hand, her warmth grounding me in the moment. But deep inside, something stirred, a question I couldn't quite name. Emily's voice cut through the noise, steady but laced with something I couldn't ignore. "To John and Sarah," she said, her hands trembling slightly as she held her glass high. "May your love be as strong and enduring as the friendship I've shared with John all these years." The crowd erupted in applause, but I saw it, the way her smile faltered, the way it didn't reach her eyes. My mind slipped away, back to those college days when it was just me and her. Late nights studying in the library, her laughter at my awful jokes, the time we sat under the stars and almost kissed. We'd been so close, teetering on the edge of something more, but we always pulled back, too afraid of losing what we had. "John." Sarah's voice pulled me back. She was looking at me, her eyes bright with joy. "This is the best day of my life," she whispered, her fingers tightening around mine. I smiled, nodding, trying to match her excitement, but my thoughts were tangled. I remembered meeting Sarah, how she'd pursued me with a boldness that swept me off my feet. She was confident, radiant, everything I thought I wanted. With Emily, it had been different, quiet, effortless, like breathing. I'd chosen Sarah because it felt like the right move, the safe one. But standing there, with a ring on my finger, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd walked away from something I'd never fully understood. The reception buzzed around me, a whirl of music and chatter. I kept catching glimpses of Emily through the crowd. She mingled with guests, her smile bright but brittle, like it might crack if you looked too long. Every time our eyes met, she'd turn away fast, like she was hiding something. I knew her too well not to notice, the strain in her posture, the way her laugh sounded forced. My chest tightened. Was she hurting? Was it because of me? At one point, I ended up next to her by the dessert table, the air between us thick with things unsaid. "You look beautiful tonight," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. They sounded too personal, too heavy for the moment. She blushed, her gaze dropping to the floor. "Thanks, John. I'm happy for you." Her voice cracked on the last word, a tiny fracture that hit me like a punch. She was lying. I could hear it, feel it. Before I could say more, she excused herself and slipped back into the crowd, leaving me staring after her. The night blurred on, dancing with Sarah, toasts from family, laughter echoing around us. But my mind kept circling back to Emily. Before I knew it, Sarah and I were heading out, hand in hand, toward the car that would take us to our honeymoon. Guests cheered, throwing rice as we passed. I couldn't resist, I looked back. Emily stood apart from the others, her arms crossed, watching us. Our eyes locked again, and for a heartbeat I felt it, a pull, a pang of something sharp, regret maybe, or longing. I couldn't tell. Sarah tugged my arm, laughing as she pulled me forward, and the connection broke. Emily faded into the crowd as we drove away. Later that night, in the quiet of our hotel room, Sarah slept beside me, her breathing soft and steady. I couldn't close my eyes. My phone sat on the nightstand, glowing in the dark, taunting me. I thought of Emily, her trembling hands, her broken smile. On impulse, I grabbed it and typed out a message. "I'll miss you." My thumb hovered over the send button for a moment before I pressed it. The words flew off into the night, and I stared at the screen waiting. No reply came. I pictured her miles away, seeing those words light up her phone. Would she smile? Would she cry? Would she even respond? The silence stretched on, gnawing at me, and I lay there restless, wondering what I'd just set in motion. A year had passed since the wedding, but it felt like a lifetime. The honeymoon glow had faded, and the cracks in our marriage were starting to show. Sarah's career as a lawyer had taken off, and with it came late nights at the office, weekend meetings, and a constant stream of phone calls that never seemed to end. I understood she was ambitious, driven, and I admired that about her. But admiration didn't fill the empty spaces that grew between us. I was a graphic designer, working from home most days, and the solitude that once felt peaceful now felt suffocating. I'd wait for her to come home, hoping for a quiet dinner or a shared laugh, but she'd breeze in, exhausted, with barely a word before collapsing into bed. One evening, the tension boiled over. I'd spent the day stewing in frustration, and when Sarah walked through the door at 10 p.m., I couldn't hold it in any longer. "You're never here," I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. "I feel like I'm living with a ghost." She froze, her hand still on the doorknob. "John, I'm doing this for us, for our future. You know how important this case is." "I know," I said, running a hand through my hair. "But what about now? What about us right now? I didn't sign up to be alone in this marriage." Her eyes flashed with anger. "And I didn't sign up to be guilt-tripped every time I walk through the door. I'm trying, John. Can't you see that?" The argument spiraled from there, words flying like daggers. We'd had fights before, but this one felt different, rawer, more desperate. When she stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door, I stood in the living room, my heart pounding, my hands clenched into fists. I needed air. I needed to get out. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone and dialed Emily's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice a familiar comfort. "Hey, John. Everything okay?" "Not really," I admitted, my voice tight. "Can we meet? I need to talk." She hesitated, then said, "Sure. There's a bar near my place. I'll text you the address." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from her in a dimly lit booth, nursing a beer. Emily looked different. Her hair was shorter, her eyes sharper, like she'd been through something. I knew she'd recently ended a relationship, but we hadn't talked much about it. She'd always been private about her love life, just like I'd been about mine. "So what's going on?" she asked, leaning forward, her gaze steady on mine. I sighed, the weight of the day pressing down on me. "It's Sarah. She's always working, and when she's home, it's like she's not really there. We just had a huge fight, and I don't know. I feel like we're drifting apart." Emily nodded, her expression sympathetic. "That sounds tough. But marriages have ups and downs, right? Maybe you two just need to reconnect." I shook my head. "It's more than that. I think I made a mistake." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and dangerous. Emily's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't speak, waiting for me to continue. I took a deep breath, the beer loosening my tongue. "I've been thinking a lot lately, about us, about what could have been. Back in college, I wanted to tell you how I felt, but I was scared. And then Sarah came along, and she was so sure, so certain, and I thought maybe that was what I needed. But now I'm not so sure." Emily's hand trembled as she reached for her glass. "John, don't say that. You're married. You made a commitment." "I know," I said, my voice low. "But what if it was the wrong one? What if I was meant to be with someone else, with you?" Her breath hitched, and for a moment, the bar around us faded away. It was just me and her, the way it used to be. Slowly, she looked up, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I've always cared about you, John. More than I should have. But I never said anything because I didn't want to lose you as a friend." My heart raced, a mix of hope and fear surging through me. "You mean you felt the same way?" She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Yes, but it's too late now. You're with Sarah." I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. Her skin was warm, familiar. "Maybe it's not too late," I whispered. She didn't pull away. Instead, she looked at me, her eyes searching mine, as if weighing the risk, the cost. Then slowly, she leaned in, and I met her halfway. Our lips touched, tentative at first, then with a hunger that had been building for years. It was like coming home, like everything I'd been missing had finally fallen into place. When we pulled back, breathless, I felt a surge of exhilaration. This was it. This was what I'd been longing for. Emily's eyes were wide, her cheeks flushed, but there was something else there too, uncertainty, maybe even fear. But I didn't care. In that moment, I was sure she was the one I was meant to be with. We left the bar together, walking in silence to her apartment. The air was thick with anticipation, with the weight of what we were about to do. Inside, we didn't speak. Words weren't needed. We fell into each other's arms, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt alive. The next morning, I woke up in her bed, the sunlight streaming through the curtains. Emily was still asleep, her face peaceful, her arm draped across my chest. I watched her for a moment, my heart swelling with something I hadn't felt in years, hope. This was where I belonged. But as I slipped out of bed and gathered my clothes, reality crept back in. I was married. I had a wife waiting at home, probably wondering where I'd been all night. Guilt should have hit me like a tidal wave, but it didn't. Instead, I felt a strange sense of calm, like I'd finally made the right choice. I left Emily's apartment quietly, promising to call her later. As I drove home, my mind raced with possibilities. I'd have to tell Sarah, of course. It wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. I couldn't keep living a lie. When I walked through the door, Sarah was in the kitchen, sipping coffee. She looked up, her eyes tired but not angry. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice flat. "I needed some space," I said, avoiding her gaze. "I stayed at a motel." She nodded, accepting the lie without question. "I'm sorry about last night," she said softly. "I know I've been distant. I'll try to do better." I forced a smile, the words I needed to say lodged in my throat. "Yeah, me too." But as I stood there, watching her pour another cup of coffee, I knew I wouldn't tell her, not yet. The affair had just begun, and I wasn't ready to let it go. Later that day, Sarah was rummaging through the laundry when she found the motel receipt in my jacket pocket. She stared at it, confusion flickering across her face. It was from a place on the outskirts of town, not the kind of motel you'd stay at alone. But she didn't say anything. Instead, she folded it carefully and slipped it into her purse, her brow furrowed in thought. I didn't notice. I was too busy thinking about Emily, about the next time I'd see her, about the life I was starting to imagine with her. The cracks in my marriage were widening, but I didn't care. I was finally with the woman I loved, and nothing else mattered. The days that followed were a blur of stolen moments and secret rendezvous. Emily and I couldn't get enough of each other. We'd meet at the motel where I'd stayed that first night, the faded neon sign buzzing faintly outside the window, or sometimes at her apartment when her roommate was out. Each time, it felt like we were stepping into a different world, one where only we existed, where the weight of my marriage and the rules of the outside didn't apply. One afternoon, as we lay tangled in the motel's worn sheets, Emily traced patterns on my chest with her finger. "John," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are we doing? This can't go on forever." I turned to her, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. Her eyes were wide, searching mine. "I know," I replied, "but I can't stop. I don't want to stop. You're everything to me." She sighed, and I saw worry cloud her gaze. "But Sarah, she's your wife. Don't you feel guilty?" I hesitated, searching for the right words. The truth was I didn't. Not really. "Sarah and I, we're not right for each other," I said finally. "I think I've always known that. With you, it feels different. It feels real." Emily smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I want to believe that, John." "I do, but I'm scared. Maybe we should end this. It's not fair to her, and I can't keep living with this guilt." Her words hit me like a punch. "Please, Emily, don't say that," I said, my voice urgent. "I need you. I'll talk to Sarah soon, I promise. Just give me a little more time." She hesitated, biting her lip, then nodded slowly. "All right," she said, "but you have to tell her. We can't keep doing this forever." I pulled her closer, relief washing over me. "We won't," I assured her. "We'll figure it out." But even as I said it, I knew we were playing with fire. The thrill of our secret was intoxicating, but there was a nagging voice in the back of my mind, warning me it couldn't last. Meanwhile, at home, Sarah was unraveling a different story. I didn't know it then, but the motel receipt she'd found had planted a seed of doubt that was growing fast. She started noticing things: my late nights, my distracted stares, the way I'd jump when my phone buzzed with a text from Emily. One evening, as I stood under the shower's hot spray, she picked up my phone from the nightstand. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through my messages. There were several from Emily. "See you soon. Miss you. Thinking of you." Nothing damning on its own, but the sheer number of them, the casual intimacy, made her stomach churn. She put the phone back just as I stepped out, toweling my hair. "Everything okay?" I asked, catching the tense set of her shoulders. "Yeah," she said quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just checking the time." I nodded, oblivious to the storm brewing inside her. "Long day?" I asked, trying to fill the silence. "Something like that," she murmured, turning away. The next day, Sarah met her friend Lisa for coffee. I wasn't there, of course, but I learned later what happened. Over lattes, she poured out her fears. "I think John might be having an affair," she confessed, her voice breaking. Lisa listened, her brow furrowed, then leaned forward. "Maybe you should hire someone to find out for sure. A private investigator." Sarah balked. "That seems so drastic, like something out of a movie." "But if it's true, don't you want to know?" Lisa pressed. Sarah thought about it, her mind racing. The uncertainty was eating her alive. Finally, she nodded. You're right. I need to know. So she contacted Mark, a private investigator Lisa recommended. He was discreet, professional, promising he'd get to the bottom of it. Sarah handed over the motel receipt and a photo of me, her hands shaking as she did. Meanwhile, Emily and I grew bolder. One day, we decided to meet at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, thinking it was safe. We sat in a corner booth, holding hands under the table, laughing softly at some shared joke. I leaned in and kissed her, a quick, tender kiss that made my heart race. I could get used to this, I said, grinning. So could I, she replied, her eyes sparkling. What if we didn't have to hide? What if this was our life? I squeezed her hand. It will be. Soon. Across the street, Mark sat in his car, his camera trained on us. The shutter clicked, capturing the moment that would unravel everything. I didn't see him, didn't feel the weight of his lens. I was too caught up in Emily, in the fantasy we were building. That evening, as I lay in bed next to Sarah, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was Emily. Today was perfect. I love you. I smiled, typing back. I love you too. Beside me, Sarah's breathing was steady, but her eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling. She'd seen the glow of my phone, heard the soft tap of my fingers. Her heart ached with suspicion, but she said nothing. The next morning, while I was at work sketching a new logo for a client, Mark called Sarah. Mrs. Anderson, I have something you need to see, he said, his voice grave. Her pulse quickened. What is it? It's better if I show you in person. Can we meet? They arranged to meet at a nearby park. As Sarah drove there, her mind raced with possibilities. Was it proof of an affair? Or something else? She wasn't sure she was ready to face the truth, but she knew she had to. When she arrived, Mark was waiting on a bench, a manila envelope in his hand. He handed it to her without a word. With trembling fingers, she opened it and pulled out a series of photographs. There I was with Emily at the cafe, our hands intertwined, our lips meeting in that fleeting kiss. The evidence was undeniable. Sarah's world tilted. She felt like she couldn't breathe. Thank you, she managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. Mark nodded. I'm sorry, he said simply, then left her alone. She sat on the bench for a long time, staring at the photos, tears streaming down her face. She'd suspected, but seeing it confirmed was like a knife to the heart. Her ambitious lawyer's mind, usually so sharp, couldn't process it. All she could feel was the betrayal, raw and searing. Meanwhile, I was at work, whistling to myself as I tweaked the logo's curves, completely unaware that my secret was out. I thought about seeing Emily again soon, about the life we'd build together once I found the courage to leave Sarah. The irony was, I didn't know the clock was already ticking down. Sarah's world had unraveled the moment she saw the photos from Mark, the private investigator. Each glossy image was a dagger. John laughing with Emily, holding her hand, kissing her with a tenderness Sarah hadn't felt from him in years. The betrayal cut deep, but beneath the pain, a plan took shape. She wouldn't let John walk away unscathed. She'd make him face the consequences, and she'd do it on her terms. Meanwhile, John remained oblivious to the storm brewing. His days with Emily were a whirlwind of stolen moments and whispered promises. He'd convinced himself their love justified the lies, and he'd begun rehearsing how to tell Sarah the truth. It was time to stop pretending, to end his marriage and start anew. Little did he know, Sarah was already 3 steps ahead. One evening, as John sketched a design at the kitchen table, Sarah entered, her expression calm but unreadable. John, she said, her voice steady, we need to talk. His heart stuttered. Did she suspect? He set his pencil down, forcing a neutral tone. Sure, what's up? She sat across from him, hands folded. Things have been off between us. I've been distant with work, and I want to fix it. How about a dinner tomorrow night? You, me, and Emily. She's your best friend, and I'd like to know her better. John blinked, caught off guard. Dinner? With Emily? Sarah nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Yes, a fresh start. What do you say? Suspicion gnawed at him, but her demeanor gave nothing away. All right, he said cautiously. I'll ask her. Perfect, Sarah replied, her smile widening, but her eyes stayed cold. The next day, John called Emily, who hesitated. Is this a good idea? She asked, her voice tight. What if Sarah knows? She doesn't, John insisted, though doubt lingered. It'll be fine. Emily sighed. Okay, but I've got a bad feeling. Her unease echoed in John's mind, but he pushed it aside. That night, The three sat around Sarah's meticulously set table: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, a bottle of red wine. The food was impeccable, but the air crackled with tension. Emily fidgeted with her napkin, her eyes flicking between John and Sarah. John tried to steer the conversation to safe topics, but every word felt like a tightrope walk. Sarah, though, was poised, pouring wine with deliberate grace. "So, Emily," she began, "how have you been? John says work's kept you busy." Emily nodded stiffly. "Yes, it's been hectic." Sarah's eyes glinted. "Must be tough finding time for other things." John's stomach twisted. Was that a jab? He glanced at Emily, who looked ready to flee. The meal dragged on, Sarah's questions sharpening like knives. "You two have been friends forever," she mused, swirling her wine. "Almost like soulmates, right?" Emily choked on her drink, coughing hard. John patted her back, his pulse racing. "Sarah, what are you getting at?" Sarah's smile vanished, her gaze hardening. "Just chatting, John." The tension snapped something inside him. He couldn't bear the charade any longer. Setting down his fork, he took a shaky breath. "Sarah, I need to tell you something." She met his eyes, unblinking. "Go ahead." "I've been having an affair with Emily," he said, the words tumbling out. "I love her. I want a divorce." Silence crashed over the room. Emily gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Sarah's face paled, her eyes widening in shock. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Sarah laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that chilled John to the bone. "You think you're the only one with secrets." She reached into her purse, pulled out a stack of photos, and slammed them on the table. There was John with Emily, kissing, laughing, unmistakable. But then she flipped to more. Sarah with a man John didn't know, their heads close, hands touching. John stared, rage and confusion colliding. "What is this?" Sarah's voice was venomous. "That's me with David, my coworker. We've been together for months." Emily lurched to her feet, chair scraping. "I can't do this," she whispered, tears spilling. "I'm sorry, John." She bolted, the front door slamming in her wake. John turned to Sarah, reeling. "You've been cheating too? Does it matter?" Sarah shot back, her laugh hollow. "You've made your choice." He stood, legs unsteady. "I'm going after her." "Go," Sarah said, her tone icy. "But don't expect me to wait." John didn't hesitate. He ran outside, spotting Emily on the street, sobbing into her hands. "Emily, wait." She whirled, tears streaking her face. "John, this is a disaster. I can't destroy your marriage. I can't live with that." He grabbed her shoulders, desperate. "I love you. I want us to be together." She shook her head, stepping back. "I need time. This is too much." Before he could argue, she flagged a cab and vanished into the night. John stood frozen, the weight of his decisions crushing him. Back at the house, Sarah sat alone, the photos fanned out before her. She picked up her phone and dialed David. "It's over," she said flatly. David sounded baffled. "Sarah, what? We've never." "I know," she cut in. "It was a lie. A test. And John failed." She hung up, staring at the staged photos of her and David, fakes she'd orchestrated to push John's hand. He'd confessed, but not out of loyalty. Now the house was silent, and Sarah was alone, her trap sprung but her victory hollow. I stood outside Emily's apartment, my heart pounding in my chest. The chaos of the past few days, Sarah's trap, my desperate chase after Emily, and the unraveling of my marriage, had left me reeling, but I knew I couldn't avoid this moment. I knocked softly, hoping she'd answer. After a tense pause, the door creaked open, and there she was, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "John," she whispered, her voice trembling with exhaustion. "Emily, please, can we talk?" I pleaded, my voice raw. She hesitated, her gaze flickering between doubt and longing, then stepped aside to let me in. The apartment was dimly lit, the air thick with unspoken words. We sat on the couch, facing each other, the distance between us feeling both vast and fragile. "I'm so sorry for everything," I began, the weight of my mistakes pressing down on me. "I never meant for things to spiral out of control like this." Emily looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously. "John, I don't know if I can do this. The guilt, the hurt we've caused, it's too much." "I understand," I said, reaching for her hand, my fingers trembling as they brushed hers. "But I love you, Emily. I want to be with you, honestly and openly." She met my gaze, tears welling up in her eyes. "But what about Sarah? Your marriage?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself for the truth I'd been avoiding. "I'm going to end it. I can't keep living a lie. I want to be with you, if you'll have me. Emily's expression softened, and she squeezed my hand, a tentative hope flickering in her eyes. I love you too, John, but we have to do this the right way. No more secrets. I nodded, relief washing over me like a tide. No more secrets. Leaving Emily's apartment, I felt a clarity I hadn't known in months. It was time to face Sarah and put an end to the charade we'd been living. As I drove home, my mind churned with what I'd say, how I'd untangle years of half-truths and resentment. When I arrived, Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of wine in front of her untouched. She looked up as I entered, her eyes cold and sharp. "John," she said flatly, "where have you been?" "I was with Emily," I admitted, choosing honesty over evasion for the first time in too long. Sarah's jaw tightened, her fingers curling around the stem of the glass. "So, you're choosing her over me?" I sat down across from her, meeting her gaze. "Sarah, our marriage has been broken for a long time. I think we both know that." She laughed, a bitter, jagged sound that cut through the silence. "And you think running off with Emily will fix everything? You're delusional." I shook my head, keeping my voice steady. "No, but I can't stay in a relationship where neither of us is happy." Sarah's eyes flashed with anger, her composure cracking. "You think I'm not happy? You have no idea what I've been through." "What do you mean?" I asked, genuinely confused by the edge in her voice. She took a shaky breath, her hands trembling as she set the glass down. "I've been having an affair too, John, for the past 6 months." The words hit me like a punch, knocking the air from my lungs. "What? With who?" "Does it matter?" she snapped, her voice rising. "The point is, we've both betrayed each other. Our marriage is a sham." I stared at her, stunned, my mind racing to process the revelation. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was waiting for you to confess first," she said, her voice breaking as tears glistened in her eyes. "I wanted to see if you had the decency to be honest with me." Guilt surged through me, heavy and suffocating. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have told you sooner." She wiped away a tear, her expression hardening again. "It's too late for apologies, John. We can't fix this." I nodded, the finality of her words settling over me like a shroud. "I think it's best if we go our separate ways." Sarah looked at me, her face a mix of sadness and relief. "I agree. Let's end this." After our conversation, I packed a bag and left the house that had once been our home. Walking away felt surreal, like stepping out of a life that no longer fit. But as I drove back to Emily's apartment, a sense of liberation began to take root. Emily welcomed me with open arms, and we spent the night talking, really talking, about our future. We knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but we were determined to build something honest and real. In the days that followed, Sarah and I started the divorce process. It was painful, but it was the right choice. I also began therapy, wanting to unpack my actions and grow into the partner Emily deserved. One evening, as we sat on her balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold, I turned to her. "I never want to lose you," I said, my voice steady with conviction. She smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. "You won't. We're in this together." That moment crystallized something for me. Love isn't just about passion or fleeting moments of connection. It's about trust, communication, and the courage to be honest, even when it's hard. Our journey had been messy and fraught with mistakes, but it had taught me lessons I'd carry forever. Looking back, I see how easily things can unravel when we bury our true feelings. If I'd been upfront with Sarah from the start, maybe we could have spared ourselves so much pain. If I'd communicated better with Emily, we might not have crossed lines that hurt others. But life doesn't hand you a roadmap, and we all stumble along the way. What matters is what we do with those stumbles, how we learn, grow, and choose to move forward. So here's my plea to you. Don't let secrets fester in your own life. Open up to the people you care about, share your fears and hopes, and build your relationships on a bedrock of trust. It's not always simple or comfortable, but it's the only way to create something lasting. And if this story stirred something in you, if it made you think about love, betrayal, or the power of honesty, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone you trust, talk about what it means to you, and take a moment to reflect on how you can bring more truth into your own connections.